Hello there, how are you all doing today? Now, I found this very interesting little tidbit of debate. I've been looking at very interesting videos. I'll probably post them up in the description later on. About why Brexit is so dangerous for the country. Now, a lot of the arguments, I've spoken with Brexiteers myself, and I've said, they're like in some sort of denial about the actual concerns of Brexit. One of them being that they think nothing's going to happen March 30th, that we're all going to just carry on like we always do. The problem is, though, with this argument is whatever happens, we are going to get a kicking. And I think that's something that with the depending on the type of deal we're going to get, depends on whether we're just going to get a bloody nose or we are just going to get out, or we're going to be walking to hospital. Either way, it's not going to be great. The problem being that seems to be this massive suicide run now with Brexiteers. It's like they've become a cult fanatics, and the leaders just told them that because they did not get enough followers, that now they have to drink the poisoned wine that's been set out for them, and they'll get this great, glorious, utopian world on a spaceship on the comet. That's how fanatical like Brexiteers are sounding at this minute, and they don't realise that they've fallen for all these spin and media stories. They've fallen for the big red buses with logos. They've fallen for the posters, Facebook. Now, this video I was watching was a Q&A with a lot of people who know their industry, and there was very shocking There's very shocking stories. The Brexiteers, who probably don't ever have to worry about that, the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg, who is a lord or a son of a lord, so that he will never have to deal with the issues of food shortages, because he can just get his family to help him out, or he can just go abroad. Same with Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage could leave the country if he wanted to. He's got the money, and because he's making great friends with Trump can kind of get him in America without any problems. And Boris Johnson is just a chancer who only wants to be leader, and he doesn't really care about Brexit. If you think he does, then you are severely mistaken. Now, in this video, there was a lot of people talking, one of which was a few employers. One of them actually stated that in his business, he is not allowed won't be allowed to do what he used to do, which was being able to just have trade go backwards and forwards. His import-export in business was fine. But what's happened now is since the deadline's happening, he's now losing contracts because there are people in Belgium that can do the same thing he can do. And they say, well, this Belgium company does not need all this paperwork that you do. And he's losing jobs, he's losing business. Yet, my friends, and I won't name them for obvious reasons, they claim that Brexit is about pro-small business. It's weird that a small business is losing money because of paperwork. Another argument that is a valid one, and you can tell a Brexiteer that till they're blue in the face, and they'll say it's Project Fear, but let's face it, Project Reality is happening now, as more and more people in Europe have already prepped enough to cushion the blow. One of the problems, for example, is our aviation industry. Now, in the aviation industry, we have a European governing body who helps regulate the mechanics who fix planes. Everything that the planes do is regulated. They train the staff. They make sure everything runs smoothly. In a Brexit exit, we have none of this. We would be ill-equipped to retrain mechanics. We just don't have the resources in this country at this moment in time. We could cause, and 10 years down the line, when mechanics retire and people leave the industry, we could have serious problems with our aviation industry. We could end up with catastrophe and crashes because people were not qualified enough to take on the responsibility. Another argument as well, that air traffic control has an agreement via the European Union, which means that we can communicate to other airport aeroplanes. Basically, we can talk to the aeroplanes. Now, without this agreement, we are basically talking blind. Now, can you imagine air traffic control if they cannot communicate? There would be a hell of an issue with planes. There would be serious congestion, and there's no guarantee that any planes could take off. Yet they'll claim it's Project Fear and all this lot, but there is strong evidence to suggest this might happen. Now, another issue with the hard Brexit, which is now what the likes of Jacob Rees-Mogg have saying, and they're using WTO rules, but I don't think they really understand how that works. It's basically a set basis, but I'll get into that later as to why, even without tariffs, it's damaging for the economy. So, with no agreements in place to Europe, trucks can't get in and out of Europe without paperwork. Now, come March 29th, if the paperwork isn't there, we'll end up with trucks like stuck on the M1, and that's even been prepped for. It's not Project Fear, it's Project Possible Reality. But if you try and explain this to a Brexiteer, they will not understand this. They think that the world will just tick on, that our small island, remember we are a small island, that heavily relies on import and exporting. If that's suddenly disrupted, we will be very weakened state financially, and we will find ourselves basically an outsider to the big game. Now, another thing that I'm starting to get a bit slightly grieved with, and you can understand why, is that when a Brexiteer talks, they talk about everything will be as if it was before. They won't let us, the world trades in a different way. And we won't, they won't just let us have no trade. It's worth bearing in mind that this is their perfect world. What they don't understand is we don't live in a perfect world. There will be issues. We have 300 treaties for trade via the EU. Without the day we leave for Brexit, all our trade agreements are gone, and it may take years and years to formulate a big agreement. Now they'll say, oh, well, they can do a trade agreement straight away and it'll take a bit. Problem is though, when you've got 300 trade agreements to renegotiate, I don't know how long you think it will take. It's not as if you can just go, yeah, there's agreements. You see, with Europe will want to benefit their member states now. We are going to be outsiders. We are competition to them. So they won't give us an easy ride. They'll take the side of Spain over Gibraltar because they're a membership state. Their membership is more important to Spain. So we could lose Gibraltar because sovereignty of Gibraltar. It's so much for like them stating that we'll have our own sovereignty. We could end up losing we could lose Gibraltar, which no one foresaw. Also, no one foresaw that there would be the hard border between Northern Ireland. Now, ironically, the day Brexit hits, we're actually going to be breaking our own law, which you probably weren't aware of. You see, if we go through WTO rules, we will be breaking our own law. And what do I mean by that? Well, when the Northern Ireland, the Good Friday Agreement happened, laws were passed, one of them stating that we could not have any borders in Ireland whatsoever, that Ireland should be an open country. Under WTO rules, we can't do that. We would have to have a border to do it. That is why it's important that we must negotiate with Ireland, and Ireland have just as much of a say in what happens, because if that is breached, then you could possibly be breaching the Northern Ireland and the Good Friday Agreement that was promised. So this greater kingdom that they promised, this kind of golden age, I think they're another one to create, will get our sovereignty back. We are going to get a kick in, and when you explain to them, I don't think they really understand how much of a kick in we will get. We might have problems with getting cash abroad. If we go on holiday, the cash machines might not be able to handle us. Remember, in the EU, if you want to get your money out, you just take your debit card or your credit card to the local bank in Spain, type in your PIN number, and you get it straight away. But you can't do that if we are out of Spain. We'd have to have a new trade agreement. But they'll make reasonable arguments, but the arguments don't stack up, unfortunately. Their biggest argument is Project Fear, but the industry experts are actually now coming across and stating that it doesn't work. The industry is not set up for Brexit. It's not been prepared. And why hasn't it been prepared? Because the truth is, we didn't think we'd be stupid enough to leave, but we are. The question now is, what do we plan? Do I, as a diabetic, have to plan hoarding insulin because I am worried that there will be blockade and medicine will be very restricted? Do I start looking at trying to see if I can get to Ireland? You know, as someone who was a Remainer, and a Remain for an educated reason, I didn't understand the arguments about sovereignty, because I thought, if anything, we'll be less in control because we would be dependent on outside forces that we had no power towards. This is something that the EU was good with. We actually did have a say in what went on with the trade agreements. We actually wrote some of the laws that they're now moaning about. You know, we actually helped write those laws. It wasn't as if like the EU dictated to us. We wrote these laws that we are now struggling with. But of course, a Brexiteer does not, I don't think they fully understood the economic situation, because all they got was a massive poster with migrants coming through. They also got a massive red bus. Yet, it's worth bearing in mind that money that they claimed for the NHS was a gross exaggeration. And as well as that, the NHS is going to be in a lot of trouble because we rely on a lot of drugs from Europe. We also rely on a lot of free movement of staff. And that is going to go. What we're going to do? Now, a lot of people I've spoke to believe that what's going to happen is that the Americans want our NHS. They want it privatised. They want to destroy it, and they'll do it via Brexit if there's a no deal. So you have to ask yourself, if you are a Brexiteer, did you consider this when you were voting? Are you still in the belief set that you're Project Fear, as reality is now kicking in, and that European countries have prepped for it? There is leaked documentation from the government about there's release of the impact assessment. To be honest, this isn't Project Fear anymore. This is Project Reality. And if you're not ready, you will be the one that gets hit by it. The Remainers, we kind of saw things coming and made as much provisions as we could. But Ramonas, you call us Ramonas, but we prepped as much as we could do. I don't see, but I don't see the this whole carry on, stop and carry on regardless attitude of will be like the World War One. World War One was not a great time. There was shortages. There was rationing. That is not an ideal situation to be in. If it might take us 25 years to kind of clean up this mess, but what would you say Morgan Farage do if it got bad? I think Farage has already said he'd go to Germany, and Morgan would probably pull a few strings. He'd disappear to an emerging market and then come back if he had to become a lord. He could be a non-domicile. Seriously, they do not care about anything because they live in this bubble that isn't reality. And economic forecasters have stated this, that it's dangerous. But there you go, that's my take on it. And as I said, I've done a lot of research onto it, which I doubt a lot of the Brexiteers ever did. But there you go. So let's hope on the 29th of March we get a deal that can at least give us in the free market, allow us to trade freely. Yes, we'll get a kicking regardless of what happens. There is the other option, but which a lot of us would like, but with it being a democratic process, unless these allegations of criminal conduct are proven to be correct and outside interference by Russia, then sadly us Remainers are going to have to like it and lump it. But it's about the deal now for us. It's about knowing what's coming. So, but there you go. That's my take on it. I just hope everyone is going to be safe after Brexit, and if you are right now, I would suggest prepping as much as you can. Try and get some, if you've got medicine, try and get at least a stockpile for a few months if you can, just in case. At the end of the day, if it doesn't happen and it's all rosy, you've lost nothing. But if it does like what people are fearing, then at least you have prepared yourself. And there's nothing wrong with preparing for the worst case scenario. In fact, some people believe it's actually rational to do so. But when the streets kick off and everything, because you've got your own garden or whatever, that you're making your own crops, you'll probably be grateful for it. But there you go. I'll see you later.